The box was pink. Not bright pink. The faded kind. The kind that looked like it had been sitting in someone's attic for years. My daughter carried it against her chest like it might explode. And when I asked her what Grandma gave her, she whispered, "Grandma said you'd cry when you saw it." My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of the day I finally realized my parents were never trying to love me. They were trying to control me. And when they lost control of me, they went after my daughter instead. It started on a Thursday afternoon. Rain tapped softly against my kitchen windows while I finished loading the dishwasher. My daughter Lily sat quietly at the table. Too quietly. Normally, after visiting my parents, she came home excited,
talking nonstop,
showing me cookies Grandma baked, or crafts Grandpa helped her make. But that afternoon, she wouldn't even take off her coat. She just sat there clutching that pink box. Her small fingers trembled around the edges. I remember drying my hands slowly, a strange pressure building in my chest. "Mama?" Her voice cracked. I walked over immediately. "What happened, baby?" She looked toward the front door like she was scared someone might walk in behind her. Then she whispered, "Grandma got mad because I said I missed you." Every muscle in my body tightened. I crouched beside her chair. "What do you mean?" Lily swallowed hard. She said big girls don't cry for their mothers. I felt sick instantly, because that sounded exactly like my mother. Cold, sharp, cruel in ways that sounded polite to outsiders. I kept my voice calm. "What else happened?" Lily pushed the box toward me carefully. "Grandma said this gift is for you." I stared at it. No ribbon, no card. Just old pink wrapping paper with tape peeling at the corners. "What's inside?" She said not to open it until I got home. Something about the way Lily said it made my stomach twist. I touched her cheek gently. "Did Grandma yell at you?" Her eyes filled immediately. That answer told me everything. I pulled her into my arms. And for a second, I wasn't 34 anymore. I was 8 years old again, standing in my parents' kitchen while my mother explained why crying was manipulation. My father believed silence solved everything. My mother believed shame solved everything else. Nothing was ever direct. Nothing was ever loud enough for outsiders to notice. But inside our home, every word carried a hidden blade. When I got pregnant with Lily at 26, my mother called it bad timing. When my husband Daniel lost his first job during the pandemic, she called him unstable. When we bought our first small house instead of waiting for something larger, she told relatives we were financially struggling. Every milestone became humiliation. Every boundary became disrespect. Still, I kept trying, because people tell you family is family. People tell you mothers always love their children. People tell you forgiveness is maturity. What they never tell you is that some parents feed on guilt like oxygen. I pulled away from Lily slowly. "Did Grandma say anything else?" Lily nodded. She said, "Tell your mother not to overreact." My blood ran cold, because my mother only used that sentence when she knew she'd crossed a line. I carried the box into the living room. Daniel had just gotten home from work. The second he saw Lily's face, his expression changed. "What happened?" I set the box on the coffee table. "I don't know yet." He looked toward Lily carefully. "She okay?"
"No."
His jaw tightened instantly. Daniel hated my parents. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly,
steadily,
like someone who had watched poison drip slowly for years. He sat beside me. "You want me to open it?" I nodded. Part of me suddenly didn't want to touch it. The room felt strangely heavy. Daniel peeled the tape carefully. The old paper crackled softly. Then he lifted the lid, and everything inside shifted my entire world. At first, it looked harmless. Old photographs. Stacks of them.
Loose.
Bent at the corners. I recognized them immediately. My childhood photos. Dance recitals. School pictures. Christmas mornings. Summer birthdays. But something was wrong. Daniel froze beside me. Then he lifted one slowly. My breath stopped. My face had been cut out. Not scribbled over. Not folded.
Cut out carefully.
Precisely. Every single photo.
Dozens of them.
My body went numb. Lily stared from the hallway. Mama? I quickly turned the box away from her. But then Daniel found the envelope underneath. Cream-colored paper. My mother's handwriting. Still perfectly sharp after all these years.
Daniel looked at me.
You want me to read it? I already knew the answer.
No.
But I nodded anyway. He unfolded the letter slowly. And read aloud. You were always dramatic. My chest tightened instantly. We tried to help you become stronger, but instead you became selfish. I stared at the carpet, unable to move. You turned our granddaughter against us with your paranoia and emotional instability. Daniel's voice grew colder with every sentence. If Lily grows up fearful and weak, it will be because of you. Then came the final line. You can erase us from pictures, but you will never erase what you are. Silence filled the room. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Because suddenly every memory came rushing back at once. Every insult disguised as advice. Every humiliation disguised as concern. Every time my mother convinced me I was too emotional, too sensitive, too difficult. Daniel folded the letter carefully. Then he asked the question I couldn't. How long has this been happening? I looked at him. My whole life. That night Lily had a nightmare. I heard her crying just after midnight. When I rushed into her room, she was clutching her stuffed bear tightly. The same brown bear my mother had given her for Christmas. She said Grandma was watching me. My heart broke instantly.
You sat beside her, Bill.
No one's watching you, sweetheart. But Lily shook her head hard. She said Grandma always knows things.
A chill crawled down my spine.
Because my mother used to say that to me too. I tucked Lily back into bed slowly. Then I noticed something strange. The bear felt heavier than usual. At first I ignored it. But something about the stitching along the back looked uneven.
Fresh.
My pulse quickened. I carried the bear into the kitchen. Daniel looked up from his laptop. What is it? I don't know yet. I grabbed scissors carefully and cut along the seam. Stuffing spilled onto the counter. Then something small and black dropped into my palm. Daniel stood immediately. What the hell is that? I stared at the tiny blinking light. And suddenly the room tilted. Because I knew exactly what it was. A tracker. Hidden inside my daughter's stuffed animal. For a second neither of us spoke. Rain hammered against the windows harder now. The kitchen lights suddenly felt too bright. Daniel took the device carefully. You sure? Yes. My voice barely came out. He flipped it over slowly. Tiny serial number. Magnetic backing. GPS tracker.
Real.
My hands started shaking violently. Not from fear. From rage. Because suddenly everything made sense. The random times my mother mentioned places we visited. The strange comments. Oh, Lily looked tired leaving the pediatrician. How was the park yesterday? How far is dance class from your house now? At the time, I thought maybe Lily mentioned things casually. Now I realized something horrifying. She knew because she was watching us. Daniel grabbed his phone instantly. I'm calling the police. But I stopped him. Not because I wanted to protect my parents. Because I knew exactly what would happen. My mother would cry. My father would deny everything. And somehow, I would become the unstable daughter again. I sat down slowly, trying to think, trying not to break apart. Daniel crouched beside me. Emily. I looked at him. This is criminal. I nodded weakly. But deep inside, something else was happening too. Something unfamiliar. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of my mother. I was done with her. The next morning my phone exploded with messages. Mom, you always overreact. Mom, Lily had a wonderful time before your anxiety ruined it. Mom, you are damaging that child emotionally. Then came the final text. Mom, families who cut off grandparents usually regret it later. Daniel read the messages silently, then looked at me. She's threatening you. I stared at the screen, but suddenly, instead of fear, I felt clarity. Crystal clear. Like years of fog had vanished overnight. Because the tracker changed everything. This wasn't guilt anymore. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This was obsession, control, violation, and worst of all, they involved my child. I opened my contacts slowly, scrolled down, and pressed a name I hadn't called in almost 8 years. Rachel Monroe. Family attorney. College friend. The second she answered, she heard it in my voice. Emily. I swallowed hard. I think I need help. There was a pause. Then she asked quietly, "What happened?" I looked toward Lily coloring quietly at the kitchen table, then at the tracker sitting beside me in a plastic bag. And I finally said the words I should have said years ago. My parents crossed a line. Rachel arrived that evening. She listened without interrupting. The box, the photos, the letter, the tracker, every detail. When I finished speaking, she leaned back slowly, then asked one question. "Do you want boundaries?" I frowned slightly. "What?" She held my gaze carefully. "Or, do you finally want freedom?" That question shattered something inside me. Because all these years, I thought survival was enough. Keeping peace, managing conflict, reducing damage. But freedom? I had never even considered it possible. Rachel examined the tracker carefully. "This helps your case enormously." Case. "You can file for a restraining order." My stomach twisted. Against my parents. Even hearing it sounded unreal. Rachel continued carefully. "Emily, this isn't normal grandparent behavior." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Thank you." She ignored him gently. "Your mother's actions show escalating fixation and emotional abuse patterns." I looked down slowly. Part of me still wanted to defend them, even after everything. That's what toxic families do. They train you to protect the people hurting you. Rachel saw it immediately. "You are not responsible for managing your mother's emotions anymore." And suddenly, I started crying. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just silent tears sliding down my face while years of exhaustion finally surfaced. Because I was tired. Tired of apologizing for existing. Tired of being called difficult for having boundaries. Tired of feeling guilty for protecting myself. Rachel handed me a tissue softly. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Your daughter is learning from this." I looked toward Lily instantly. Still coloring quietly. Still innocent. Still trusting me completely. Rachel continued. "She's learning whether love means fear." That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because suddenly this wasn't about me anymore. It was about what Lily would normalize. What she would accept one day from people who claimed to love her. And I knew then. This cycle had to end with me. That night I blocked my mother's number. Then my father's. Then my aunt's. Then my cousin's. Because toxic families rarely operate alone. They operate like systems. Punishing the one who speaks up. At 2 a.m., my mother emailed again. "You are mentally unstable." Still, I didn't answer. By morning, 23 missed calls, voicemails, messages, demands, threats, guilt. But for the first time in my life, I stayed silent. And that silence terrified them more than any argument ever could. Then Saturday happened, and everything escalated. Because when I opened my front door that morning, my mother was standing on my porch, holding another gift box. My mother smiled like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't hidden a tracker inside my daughter's toy. Like she hadn't sent a box full of mutilated childhood photos. Like she hadn't spent my entire life teaching me fear disguised as love. She stood there in her beige coat, holding another pink box against her chest. And somehow, that terrified me more than if she'd arrived screaming. Because calm was always her most dangerous form. "Emily." Her voice sounded soft, careful, practiced. I kept the storm door closed between us. "What are you doing here?" She tilted her head slightly. "You blocked me." "Yes." "I think you're making emotional decisions again." There it was. The same tone she used when I was 12. Lily was still asleep upstairs. "Thank God. You need to leave." My mother sighed dramatically. I brought Lily a peace offering. I stared at the box.
No.
Emily, don't do this. Do what? Tear the family apart. The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I said quietly, you hid a tracker inside my daughter's bear. For the first time, her expression flickered. Not guilt. Annoyance. Like she was irritated I'd discovered it. That was for safety. My stomach turned. You tracked my child. She's my granddaughter. No, I snapped. She's my daughter. My mother's eyes hardened instantly. And there she was. The real version. The one outsiders never saw. Cold.
Controlling.
Hungry for authority. You've always been unstable when emotional. I almost flinched automatically. Almost. Years of conditioning don't disappear overnight. But then I remembered Lily crying at the kitchen table. And something inside me steadied. You need to leave now. My mother's smile vanished completely. You know judges don't like mothers who isolate children from family. The threat landed exactly how she intended.
Precise.
Calculated. I stared at her. You came here to threaten me? I came here to fix this before you embarrass yourself publicly. I opened the door slightly. Not to invite her in.
To hand her something.
The tracker. Sealed inside a plastic evidence bag. The second she saw it, her face changed. Just for a fraction of a second. But I saw it.
Fear.
Real fear. You should go. Her voice sharpened immediately. You are blowing this out of proportion. I held the bag higher. You put surveillance on a 7-year-old. I was protecting her. From what? She stepped closer. From becoming you. Silence crashed between us. And strangely, that was the moment everything finally became clear. Not the tracker. Not the photos. Not the letters. That sentence. Because my mother truly believed I was the problem. Not because I'd failed, but because I stopped obeying. And once I understood that, I stopped needing her approval forever. You need to leave my property. She stared at me for several long seconds. Then her face softened suddenly. Instantly. Like a switch flipped. Tears filled her eyes.
Classic.
Weaponized vulnerability. I don't understand why you hate me so much. I almost admired the performance. Almost. Because for years, that tactic worked perfectly. Anytime I confronted her, she became the victim. Anytime I set boundaries, she became wounded. Anytime I defended myself, she called me cruel. But not anymore. I don't hate you. My voice stayed calm. I just don't trust you near my child. That hit harder than yelling ever could. She inhaled sharply. Then whispered, you'll regret this when I'm dead. Another classic line. I stepped back slowly. And then I shut the door. My entire body shook afterward. I nodded. And for the first time, they were grief. Grief for the mother I never had. 3 days later, we filed for a restraining order. Rachel moved fast. Very fast. Apparently, GPS tracking involving a child changes things dramatically. Especially with documented emotional harassment. We submitted everything. The tracker. The letters. The text messages. The voicemails. Even Lily's statements from her child therapist. That part destroyed me. Rachel prepared me carefully. Your parents will retaliate. Within 48 hours, relatives started calling. My Aunt Diane left a voicemail first. You know your mother is devastated. Then cousin Melissa. Grandparents have rights too. Then my father finally called from a block number. His voice sounded exhausted. You're taking this too far. I laughed bitterly. No one said that when they took things too far with me. Silence. Then his quiet answer. You know how your mother gets. That sentence. That exact sentence. The one everyone used my entire life. As if cruelty became acceptable through repetition. I closed my eyes slowly. No, Dad. My voice cracked. You knew how she was. He didn't answer. Because deep down, he knew it was true. My father spent decades protecting peace instead of protecting people. And silence always sides with the aggressor eventually. The court hearing happened 3 weeks later. I barely slept the night before. Lily stayed with Daniel's sister. I didn't want her anywhere near that courthouse. The restraining order was granted temporarily pending further review. No unsupervised contact. No direct communication. No visitation. My mother stood abruptly. This is absurd. The judge looked directly at her. No, ma'am.
His voice stayed calm.
What's absurd is placing a tracking device inside a child's toy. She looked at me then. Pure hatred. Not sadness. Not heartbreak.
Hatred.
Because I exposed her. Because I stopped protecting her image. Outside the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. No dramatic cameras. No viral headlines. Just cold air and quiet sunlight. But somehow, that moment still felt enormous. Because trauma doesn't end with explosions. Sometimes it ends with paperwork. Rachel hugged me tightly. You did the right thing. I nodded slowly. But honestly, it didn't feel victorious. It felt sad.
Heavy.
Like burying something that should have been beautiful. That night Lily came home. She ran into my arms immediately. And for the first time in weeks, she looked peaceful. Daniel made pancakes for dinner because Lily called breakfast foods happy meals. We sat together laughing softly, while syrup dripped across the table. And suddenly I realized something. The house felt calm. Not tense. Not monitored. Not emotionally dangerous.
Just calm.
I wasn't waiting for criticism anymore. I wasn't checking my phone nervously. I wasn't preparing defenses in my head. The silence felt safe now. Weeks passed. Then months. The smear campaign continued for a while. Apparently, I was cruel. Ungrateful. Mentally unstable.
Controlling.
Family friends stopped speaking to me. Certain relatives disappeared entirely. But do you know what surprised me? Life became lighter anyway. Because peace built on self-betrayal is not peace. It's captivity. One afternoon, Lily asked me something while we planted flowers outside. Mama? Yeah, baby? Why doesn't Grandma like you? The question broke my heart quietly. I sat beside her carefully. She does love me in her own way. Lily frowned slightly. Then why does she hurt your feelings? Children see truth faster than adults. I brushed dirt from my hands slowly. Sometimes people think love means controlling others. Lily thought about that seriously. Then she asked, That's not real love, right? I smiled softly.
No.
She nodded once, then returned to planting flowers. Like the answer was simple. Maybe it always was. 6 months later, the court finalized permanent restrictions. Supervised contact only. Conditional therapy requirements. No gifts without inspection. No unscheduled communication. My mother called it humiliation. I called it safety. My father sent one final letter afterward.
Handwritten. Short.
He apologized.
Not fully.
Not perfectly, but enough to reveal something painful. He knew all along. He wrote, I thought keeping peace was protecting the family. I see now I was protecting myself from conflict instead. I cried reading that, because it was true, and because sometimes the quiet people cause damage too. Not through cruelty, through surrender. I never answered the letter. Not out of hatred, but because healing sometimes requires distance from everyone who helped normalize your pain. Last week Lily turned 8. We had a small birthday party in the backyard.
Cupcakes.
Music. Water balloons. Nothing extravagant. But while I watched her laughing in the sunlight, I suddenly remembered something. At 8 years old, I already knew how to make myself smaller to avoid upsetting my mother. At 8 years old, Lily still feels safe enough to laugh loudly. And maybe that's the greatest victory of all. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not courtroom orders. Safety. Freedom.
Peace.
That night after everyone left, Lily climbed into my lap on the porch swing. The sky glowed orange across the neighborhood. Mama? You'll always protect me, right? I held her tightly. Always. Even when it's hard. Even when people get angry. Even when family becomes the danger instead of the shelter. I kissed the top of her head softly. Always. And for the first time in my entire life, I finally understood something. Breaking a toxic cycle doesn't start with anger. It starts the moment someone decides, "This pain stops with me." Thank you for listening to Relaxing Drama Stories. And remember, setting boundaries is not cruelty. The people who call you too sensitive are often the ones hurting you most. And protecting your child from toxic family members is not overreacting. It's love.